The threat in the shadows. The galaxy had lived in relative peace for centuries, its vast empires governed by complex treaties and fragile alliances. In this delicate equilibrium, Earth had stood on the outskirts, respected but distant, with a fleet powerful enough to defend its borders but rarely involved in galactic politics. That all changed when a cryptic message arrived at the Terran Imperial Command. The message came from an anonymous source, intercepted in the deep reaches of the Outer Rim. The only words it carried were a chilling warning. The Shadow Fleet approaches. Earth's top military leaders were baffled, but the implications were undeniable. The message wasn't a threat. It was a signal of something far worse, a galactic empire that had been moving unseen through the shadows, laying the groundwork for a devastating war. Captain Alara Hayes, leader of the Artemis, the Terran flagship, was called to brief the Galactic Council. She was a seasoned veteran, respected among her peers, and trusted to bring the truth to light. Her face was stone cold as she stood before the council, the great meeting hall brimming with representatives from every corner of the galaxy. The Tarak, warriors who were as feared as they were respected. The Valor, a race of philosophical minds whose technology shaped galactic law. And the Therics, a cold-blooded reptilian species known for their merciless pragmatism. Elara's voice rang out, steady but tinged with urgency. We've detected the Shadow Fleet's movements. They are unlike anything we've encountered before, ruthless, swift, and methodical. We must unite or face total annihilation. Her words echoed through the chamber, but the response was not what she had hoped for. The Valor, ever diplomatic, questioned the validity of Earth's warning. Proof is needed, they argued. Until we see undeniable evidence, this is nothing more than fear-mongering. The Tarak, never known for their patience, grumbled with suspicion, questioning Earth's intentions. Only the Therics remained silent, their reptilian eyes narrowing with a calculating intensity. For days the Council deliberated, dismissing Earth's warnings as a product of overzealous paranoia. But the tension grew, and Alara knew this was just the beginning. A shadow. Fleet was coming and the galaxy was not ready. The reluctant alliance weeks passed, and despite Earth's desperate pleas, no action was taken. The Council continued to ignore the warnings, focused on internal politics and the ongoing peace talks. But then, the unthinkable happened. The first attack came without warning. The Tarak fleet was on patrol near their homeworld, scanning the outer reaches of their territory, when suddenly, communications were cut off. The fleet's powerful ships, some of the most advanced in the galaxy, were torn apart by an invisible enemy. The Tarak had always prided themselves on their military might, but they were unprepared for this. Their ships were disabled in an instant, and their commanders could only watch as their greatest defenses crumbled. It wasn't long before the Valor received similar reports from their colonies. Entire systems went dark, and what little communication they had was full of static, as if their enemies were blocking every signal, every transmission. A deep sense of dread settled over the galaxy. The Shadow Fleet had made its presence known, and now it was time to take action, or face extinction. Alara's command was clear. Earth's forces were mobilizing, and the Terran fleet would not stand alone. But the call for unity was not an easy one. The Tarak and the Valor, who had long maintained an air of superiority over humanity, found themselves forced to turn to Earth for help. Even the Therics, who had been skeptical from the beginning, grudgingly joined the coalition. A tenuous alliance was formed, but trust had not been earned. Each empire viewed the others with suspicion, their motives unclear. The real question remained: could they unite in time to stop a force that had already brought empires to their knees? The first strikes against the Shadow Fleet were unsuccessful. Terran forces, despite their technological superiority, found themselves outmatched by the enemy's speed and coordination. It was clear that the Shadow Fleet was not just an opponent. They were a new type of enemy, one that did not play by the rules of traditional warfare. Humanity was forced to adapt quickly, developing new strategies and weapons to counter the unknown force. But the longer the war dragged on, the more it became clear that this wasn't just a military campaign. The Shadow Fleet's true purpose was much darker. Earth's worst fears were beginning to take shape. The Shadow Fleet was not only intent on conquering, it was hunting. The infiltration Captain Hayes, now part of a combined fleet of Terran, Tarak, and Valor forces, had spent months in the thick of battle. The war was spiraling out of control. The Shadow Fleet's tactics were unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. They didn't just destroy, they erased entire systems from existence, as if they had a vendetta against civilization itself. In the wake of the failed campaigns, Ilara made a bold decision. A small, elite strike team would infiltrate the heart of the Shadow Fleet's operations to gather intelligence. It was a suicide mission, but Earth's leaders had no other choice. The team, consisting of Terran soldiers and Tarak warriors, embarked on their mission deep within enemy territory. The journey was perilous. The Shadow Fleet's presence was ubiquitous and they were always one step ahead. Yet through sheer determination and ingenuity, Ilara's team breached the enemy's front lines and made their way to a hidden command station located on a dying star in the farthest corner of the galaxy. The station was heavily fortified, surrounded by cloaked ships that seemed to vanish into the blackness of space. What they uncovered inside was nothing short of a revelation. The Shadow Fleet was not an empire at all. It was a collective of shattered civilizations, all bound together under the control of a single ruthless force. The leaders of these ancient empires had been wiped out, their people enslaved and repurposed for war. The Shadow Fleet was not just an invading force, it was an army of the lost, composed of those who had been consumed by the dark unknown. The implications of this discovery were staggering. The Shadow Fleet had not come to expand, they had come to erase. The galaxy was their prey and every empire in its wake was doomed. The heart of the enemy. The truth had been laid bare, but the galaxy was still reeling from the shock. Earth's military leaders knew they had to strike back, but they were struggling to keep the fragile alliance intact. With the Shadow Fleet's vast forces closing in on Earth, there was no time to waste. Ilara knew the only way to stand a chance was to go directly to the heart of the Shadow Fleet, where their leadership resided. A final, desperate mission was launched to infiltrate the enemy's central command and strike at the source of their power. The operation was one of the most dangerous missions ever undertaken. Ilara and her team, now bolstered by soldiers from the Valor and Tharix, embarked on a covert assault against a heavily guarded enemy fortress. The stakes couldn't have been higher. Failure meant the destruction of Earth, and with it the entire galaxy. For days, the team worked their way through Shadow Fleet defenses, taking down patrols and disabling communications. But the closer they got to their objective, the more they realized the true scope of the threat. The enemy had anticipated their every move, as if they had known humanity's strategy all along. When they finally reached the heart of the Shadow Fleet's command, they discovered a shocking truth. The leader of the Shadow Fleet was not a single entity, but a collective consciousness, a fusion of the minds of millions of conquered species. The Shadow Fleet was not just an army. It was an intelligence, an ancient mind capable of bending entire empires to its will. The moment of truth arrived. Ilara and her team had to destroy the heart of the Shadow Fleet's power, even if it meant sacrificing themselves. The battle for the future. The galaxy's final stand against the Shadow Fleet was nothing short of cataclysmic. The coalition forces, led by Ilara, engaged in a desperate battle against the might of the Shadow Fleet. The enemy's ships were everywhere, their weapons far beyond anything the galaxy had ever encountered. But humanity's ingenuity, the heart of Earth's strength, began to turn the tide. The Terrans, with their knowledge of unconventional warfare and resourcefulness, devised a series of devastating counterattacks. Ships that had once been on the verge of defeat now surged forward, engaging the enemy with fierce determination. The Shadow Fleet's collective intelligence began to falter, as it could not predict the unpredictable nature of humanity's tactics. In the midst of the battle, Ilara made a final sacrifice. She detonated a quantum bomb at the heart of the Shadow Fleet's flagship, destroying the collective consciousness that had bound the enemy together. The explosion reverberated through the galaxy, signaling the end of the war and the collapse of the Shadow Fleet. A new dawn with the Shadow Fleet destroyed. The galaxy breathed a collective sigh of relief. But Alara knew that this victory was not the end. It was merely the beginning. Earth had risen from the ashes, not just as a survivor, but as the leader of a new galactic alliance. The once fragmented empires now stood united, bound together by the shared memory of what they had faced. Humanity had proven itself more than capable of leading, and the galaxy would never forget that. As Alara looked out across the stars, she knew that humanity's role in the galaxy had changed forever. The Shadow Fleet had been vanquished, but new threats would inevitably rise, and next time humanity would be ready.